Hey everyone, and thanks for jumping back into the cryptoverse. Today we're going to talk about Ethereum and the idea that it could be simply loading up on rocket fuel, waiting for Bitcoin volatility to calm down. If you guys like the content, make sure you subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up. Also check out the Telegram channel, which you can find a link to in the description below. So, you guys know me, I'm a huge Ethereum bull, and I have been for a really long time. We've discussed these moves every step of the way. We've been there every step of the market cycle. During our accumulation phase of a lifetime, during our reaccumulation phase of a lifetime. And then we had liftoff, okay? And theoretically speaking, right, we discussed endlessly this momentum shift from December going into January. And in fact, we saw that, right? We saw that. We came back up to the top of the channel, which is what we were hoping for. Now, what we were not hoping for was to see it come back down some. But we understand why this happened, right? We're pragmatic. We're not going to pretend like, oh, this doesn't make sense. No. We respect the fact that Bitcoin controls the market. And it's because we respect that allowed us to DCA systematically into Ethereum when Bitcoin was, going crazy over here, causing the Ether Bitcoin valuation to bleed. We did this because we knew every time we have to get to the alts are dead phase and then they'll blast off, okay? And what we've discussed endlessly is that the two main things that would cause, or the one main thing that would cause Ethereum's valuation against Bitcoin to start going back down would be increased Bitcoin volatility. And that could be represented by a capitulation to the 20-week moving average, or it could be represented by Bitcoin breaking out above its prior all-time high at 42K and re-entering price discovery mode. Now, fortunately for us, if we had to pick one of those options in terms of Ether's USD prospects, this one is the better option. Okay, what's happened is the better option in terms of Ether USD's valuation. Because if we drop, then Ether's valuation against Bitcoin goes down, and it likely goes down against USD. Now, there'd be a lot of reasons why we might want it to drop at some point. Especially if you've skimmed profits on Ethereum, maybe some altcoins here and there, you're hoping to see it go back down to the 20-week moving average at some point, and so you can load back up. But in the meantime, Ethereum now is essentially in a holding pattern, I think. This is my interpretation of what's going on. It's of course in no way financial advice, but with Elon and with Tesla buying 1.5 billion with a B of Bitcoin, recently, it is, and the news of that breaking, it seems like retail has FOMO'd back in and is driving this price up because, Tesla already bought it, right? They're not causing necessarily, well, I guess we don't know that they're not buying more, but they're not necessarily causing this surge. This surge could be caused by retail coming into the market on the idea that, okay, Tesla bought in at $1.5 billion worth of Bitcoin. Therefore, we have a new Bitcoin all-time high, and now it is entered into price discovery mode. What does that mean for Ethereum? Well, we know what it means for Ethereum. It means that Ether USD has entered into kind of a different type of market state, if you will. It's no longer, right now, while Bitcoin's trending up, its valuation against Bitcoin is going down, okay? And it will continue to likely go down until Bitcoin stops its price discovery mode. Okay, it's as simple as that. It's not more complicated than that. It's just as long as Bitcoin price discovery continues, Ethereum's valuation against Bitcoin is more likely to bleed than not bleed on, say, the weekly time scale. Now, any given day, you might see things ebb and flow like back and forth, okay? Now, a lot of people who watch this channel own both Bitcoin and Ethereum. But I also know, after talking to many people, that most people actually own more Ethereum than Bitcoin. So the good news for you right now is that as Bitcoin trends up, Ether USD will likely be dragged up with it, okay? But this is not the type of movement for Ethereum that would be indicative of a blow off top, right? It's just being dragged up by Bitcoin. Whether it wants to go up or not, that's just what's likely going to happen because Bitcoin has a way of just dragging Ethereum up. There's other times during the cycle where Ethereum drags Bitcoin up. We've seen that happen many times, in fact. If you guys remember, back, it was over here, Ethereum broke out first, and then eventually Bitcoin broke out as well. So we've seen it happen both ways. But when you're in a bull market, as we always know, Bitcoin reserves, and in any type of market, Bitcoin always reserves the right to take back the show at any time that it wants to. And so my interpretation of what's going on is you could argue that Ethereum is loading up on rocket fuel, which is somewhat poetic considering that Tesla put 1.5 billion in Bitcoin, which is owned by Elon Musk, which also owns SpaceX, which is trying to send people to, the moon and Mars. So now that Ethereum is more or less, I feel like, in a holding pattern, it might trend up against USD anytime Bitcoin has a short-term dump. Ethereum USD will likely dump as well, but they both can recover relatively quickly. And I think I was under the impression before Bitcoin broke out to say 42 or above 42K that Ethereum had enough juice in the tank to make it to 2K or even 3K without Bitcoin going higher than 42K. If you look at our regression rainbow, as we've showed many times, the next step here would be, the top of the orange band, which is closing in on 3K. Right now it's around $2,800 or so. So the way in which Ethereum approaches $2,000 could also be indicative of how likely is it to go to $3,000 or $4,000. So imagine a scenario where Bitcoin continues to, just move up week over week for a few weeks, right? This is one scenario. And Ethereum is dragged up with it, kicking and screaming, right? It doesn't necessarily want to go up because for whatever reason, right? Maybe it just wants to go up on its own accord. It doesn't just want to go up because Bitcoin's pulling it up. But it will likely go up whether it wants to or not. If it gets dragged up to 2K, well, what if it goes to 2K, right? If it gets dragged up to 2K just on the back of Bitcoin, then you could certainly argue that the case for a bullish breakout whenever Bitcoin volatility calms back down would be even more credible. Because at this point, you have more capital coming into the market, flowing into Bitcoin. People might take profits on Bitcoin whenever they think it's starting to calm down a little, maybe FOMO back into Ethereum, ride each wave back and forth, okay? So people are always chasing the pumps, right? This is what, I don't do this, but this is what a lot of people do. They chase the pumps back and forth. And so if Bitcoin were to say just steadily climb up 50K, 55K, 60K, something like that, and Ethereum just kind of slowly moves up with it, then at some point, like we saw with Bitcoin here, there could be a Bitcoin correction, and then Ethereum could correct too, and this is that dangerous mindset that people always fall into. They're like, oh, well, should I just sell my Ethereum? They were saying this here, and then here, they're like, should I just sell my Ethereum because eventually Bitcoin will correct, and then Ethereum will correct as well. Well, the problem with that line of thinking is, if Bitcoin continues to trend up, then there's going to be like days here and there where Bitcoin volatility calms down, and then Ether can maybe run up $100 or $200. But that's not necessarily a blow-off type peak move. Okay, so then, but if you think, oh, like let me just sell my Ethereum and then buy back in whenever Bitcoin has a correction because then Ether will have a correction. Well, the problem with that is if you sell, say, your Ethereum at, let's say you sold it at say $1,700 or something, and then Bitcoin trends up to 60K, and let's say Ether trends up to maybe like $2,200, then Bitcoin corrects, and then Ether corrects, but maybe Ether only corrects back down to 1,900 or 2,000, and then it blasts off when Bitcoin volatility calms down, and there's evidence it's not necessarily going to dump in the immediate term. Okay, so in that type of scenario, you would not have been better off selling your Ether because while you maybe were waiting for a Bitcoin dump, at that point, the dump that came for Ether USD maybe didn't get you down to the level before. Now, we're not saying it has to play out like that, but we said the same thing every step of the way for Bitcoin here, that if you do sell your Ether, when you buy back in, it might be at a higher price simply because, yes, a correction for Bitcoin will come. And yes, that's probably what's needed before altcoins can really start to make their, most amazing moves. But how high will these coins trend up before they have that correction? And that's a hard thing to guess, right? That's really hard to guess. So one good thing too about this thing playing out is that if we come back up to the top of the channel at some point, that could be at a 0.05 valuation. Well, this 0.05 valuation is against Bitcoin. So if Bitcoin's at 50K and Ether USD or Ether Bitcoin's at 0.05, then that would put Ether USD at a modest $2,500. And I think this is still very doable, right? We've looked at volatility for Ethereum, compared it to Bitcoin. We speculate that it's one market cycle behind Bitcoin. I think it has the volatility it needs to make it to $2,500, maybe even $3,000, maybe even higher. But we'll take it one step at a time, right? We've already looked over 2K, we've looked at 3K. Let's try to conquer those before we get too, out there and start talking about prices that are higher. We're not saying that it can't go higher. One of the arguments that we've talked about, for Bitcoin is that the peaks tend to trend down a few log lines here. Typically, it's been 2.5 log lines. Note that these log lines are different, but the last one peaked up here. So I don't really anticipate us getting back to that level. Okay, and that level currently ranges from 9,000 to 17,000. Now, the biggest misconception here is that people will then think, oh, so are you saying that Ethereum can never reach 10K? No, I'm not. These will trend up. I'm saying that time is a factor, and that as these continue to trend up, right, I don't think we'll ever be able to chase it, to reach it, because, by the end of the year, the bottom of this regression band would be at 14K potentially, and the top could be at, 20K. I don't think we're necessarily going to make it there. Now, if we do, so be it, right? That would be great. But let's suppose that we don't make it there, and let's even be extremely conservative, which to me is not really that conservative, but for some people, let's just say it can't even go there either. So what does that leave on the table? So let's be fairly conservative in terms of how high up we can go on the regression bands. Well, if we go to the top of this one, it still yields a $3,000 Ethereum, and that's just going up one more band. Another band, which I think is theoretically possible this market cycle, is already at 5K, and it's trending up as well. So there's certainly reason to think that Ethereum could have a lot more gas in the tank, no pun intended. But there's theoretically a way for Ethereum to get to 3K, maybe even higher, and it not really break any of the models of, say, diminishing returns or anything like that. So this is what's important. I think this is something that we need to consider, and that if we're patient, we just need to wait, in my opinion, until Bitcoin volatility calms back down. I mean, and even in a world where Bitcoin is not able to hold these levels, and let's say, it does something like this, where it comes up and then comes back down, even in that world, Ethereum can still have plenty of opportunities to rally. We saw what Ethereum did here, right? This is when Ethereum went up like 2x or more. So even when Bitcoin's going down over a couple weeks, Ethereum can still skyrocket. So my opinion, as always, is that until Bitcoin volatility diminishes, we will not see a sustained Ethereum move against Bitcoin. On any given day, it can happen, but until that happens, it's more just like we're in a holding pattern, and hopefully at some point Bitcoin, we know at some point Bitcoin volatility will reduce. What we hope happens when it does reduce is we don't want it to be a straight capitulation. Okay, this is as long as it's not like a straight capitulation down, even if it's, say, like a slower correction like this, even if Bitcoin comes up and then corrects back down, as long as we're not just capitulating immediately, then I think Ethereum has the catalyst it needs to trend much higher than $1,700. Of course, there's going to be some volatility along the way. Remember, we have the premium list at intothecryptoverse.com, but if you want a link to the sale, the altcoin season sale, make sure you find a link to that in the description below. You can lock in the rate as long as you don't cancel. You get access to the weekly reports, the weekly premium videos, the Telegram alerts channel, the risk dashboard, premium only live streams, and more. Make sure you guys check it out and lock in the lower rate if you're looking to sign up. Make sure you subscribe. Let's go for 110,000 subscribers. Give the video a thumbs up. Turn on your notification. So click the bell if you want to be notified of future videos. Thank you guys for tuning in. Subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye.